What is going on, everyone? This is Miles Dompierre, and welcome to a hot and fresh episode of Tier Throwdown, the show where we get two folks in the Thunderdome to definitively decide the ranking of entire franchises, of entire collections of video games. And today, I'm stoked to be joined by the legendary Jeff Grubb of Giant Bomb, of Game Mess Decides, and the world's #1 Nintendo podcast, Last of the Nintendogs. Jeff, how are you doing on this fine Wednesday?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here. I'm happy to be hanging out, talking about Zelda, one of my favorite things to do. This is great. Let's make it happen. I am one of the last Nintendogs, so I'm an authority on this.
You are an
look out
authority.
for that.
That's like I said, the reason I reached out to you is because you host the world's premier Nintendo podcast, and I was like,
right.
if I'm gonna do Zelda, I have to get at least one half of the podcast here to throw down. And so if you are new to the show, last time around, Randall Thor and I, we ranked every single OG Xbox game. It took forever. It was a lot of games to go through. This time, less games, a little more focused. But the gist of the show is we go through every single game in a collection. There is only one ranking. So the rules are, no matter where we end up in terms of, let's say I'm an S, you are an F, we have to come to a consensus, Jeff. We have to meet somewhere and slap a ranking on this thing.
Yeah, I am ready to compromise all of my deepest, most true held beliefs.
Number 2, if one of us hasn't played a game, the other person gets definitive say on the ranking of that particular title. Rule number 3, if neither one of us have played the game, we go to YouTube. We pull up a video and we decide that game's entire ranking based off how we feel about the video we were watching on YouTube of this particular game.
It's how I wrote all my video game reviews.
It's the only fair way to do it. Watch 30 seconds of a video out of context online and determine its fate forever. Okay,
that's objectivity in the world of video game journalism.
Exactly. Rule number 4, the audience can veto our decisions, Jeff. So if you are a channel member or if you drop a super chat, you can officially veto a decision. You have to you have to suggest a new rank and a reason why it deserves that rank. And then Jeff and I both have to agree on that decision. So you guys can't be wilding out here and make us put Breath of the Wild in F tier. All right. If you're gonna veto, make sure it's a good point. And if Jeff and I agree, we'll consider shifting the placement around a little bit there.
Yeah, but the bigger the money, the bigger the chance I'm going to say yes. So keep that in mind.
Okay, Jeff, before we get into this proper, let's get a check for where you're at in terms of being a Zelda fan. First question I have for you, what's the first Zelda game you ever played?
The Legend of Zelda for the Nintendo Entertainment System in, let's say, I was 5, so that would have been in '88. So I played it a couple years after it came out, but we got it. I played it right away. I couldn't quite play it. I got it. I got why it was exciting, but I would watch my brothers play mostly at that point. But I played it, and I eventually would go back and play that game and played a lot of it, and I've beaten it multiple times now because I love it. It's a great game.
Ooh, beautiful. Yeah, my first foray was A Link to the Past. That was the first Zelda game I played, and I distinctly remember going to my aunt's house and seeing this big poster of Hyrule on the wall, and I had no idea what it was. I was just a dumb kid, and I was like, ooh, that's bright, that's colorful, what's that?
Yep.
And she's like, oh, that's from Zelda. And I'm like, what's Zelda? And she's like, oh, you've never played Zelda? So she brings her Super Nintendo into her bedroom, hooks it up for me, and then I get my hands on it, and that was the game that solidified my love of gaming in a huge way. So since then, the Zelda franchise has been incredibly important to me, and I've played almost every single one. Haven't loved every single one, but I have played almost every single one, so I'm excited to dive into it. All right, Jeff, let's do it. Let's get this show started, and we're going to be doing this chronologically, baby. We're going to be taking a trip down history's past, and we're going to start with The Legend of Zelda on NES, Jeff. So you mentioned this. This was your introduction to Zelda. How you feeling about it? How you feeling about the placement of this particular title?
It's like I don't want to shoot my shot too early here and be like, this is and like you'd be like, okay, we're gonna start putting stuff right up there at the top right away because there's a lot of Zelda games and there's a lot of stuff to deal with, and they definitely have established different sort of tracks for what, not spirit tracks, different tracks for what Zelda can be. And I think for a lot of people, this is not it anymore. This is not what they think of when they think of Zelda. It is when I think of Zelda. So as we'll talk about games later on, and people like, is this really a Zelda game? It's a good game, but is it a Zelda game? Well, my answer will be like, go look back to that first Zelda for where they're actually drawing their inspiration. I think that it really is. It's a special game. It does capture that feeling that Miyamoto was going for of just being a little kid and exploring caves and the woods and just whatever you stumble across could be nothing. It could be something magical. And because of all that, I'm like, it still holds up today. It doesn't hold up quite as well as some of these later games we'll get to here very soon. But I think it still holds up actually surprisingly well, especially for an NES game. I want to put it in A, but I could probably compromise for B depending on what I hear from you.
Okay, I'm glad you said that. This was your first one, so yeah, like you said, I was kind of expecting you to come out of the gate strong, slap an S on me, and I'd have to push back a little bit. But it is a transformative game. It spawned this one of the world's most well-known and beloved franchises, so you cannot discredit that. For me, I didn't play this until after I played Link to the Past. So for me, this was a big downgrade in every possible way. And Legend of Zelda, while it is an important franchise, the original Zelda played a lot off of adventure and sword quest. So it did innovate in some ways, but it pulled heavily from those games. You can go back and watch original gameplay from Adventure on Atari and Sword Quest, and it is very comparable, like very, very similar. So it's
Saberwolf as well from Rare. Actually, it's like this game looks a lot like Saberwolf if you actually look really closely.
So it is a fantastic game, and I do not want to discredit this game at all. And again, when we talk about the games here today, this ranking is in the context of Zelda. So we are ranking it against all the other Zeldas, not just video games. So an F-tier Zelda in this is probably going to be better than most games. We have to keep that in mind as well.
Well, we'll see. We'll get there.
Yeah, that's very true. So I'm gonna say B. I'm gonna say B for this. I agree. It is a fantastic game, but compared to some of the other games we're gonna talk about, it ain't on the same level, Jeff.
Yeah, it's I think it's a very strong B. I would like it to be like number 1 in B for a long time. Let's see what else we end up putting in B. But I think I'll be okay with it. It's just for me when I think about when I come to like I was playing Chia. And it's a new game. It's a new Zelda-like, and it's definitely trying to be like Breath of the Wild. But the thing it reminds me the most of, honestly, is the Legend of Zelda. And I'm like, this when I come to a game, and I can say that about it, it is doing so much right. It is nailing. It must be nailing so much because this is still the game that I treat as like my North Star for what I come to games for. It's just exploration and discovery, and this game has so much of that. It just throws you in there, just says go. And it's like that was a lot of games did that, but they didn't do it in a world where, well, you can go, but now do you want to go up, left, right? You can go in any direction here, and you got to decide for yourself where you want to go. And if you want to go the way that's hard, you're not going to know until you start going that way and actually see for yourself. And you're like, oh, if I went the other way, it's easier. So I'm gonna keep poking and prodding and see if the world pushes back on me. This is what I come to games for. This game nailed it, but they clearly refine it over time. Let's go ahead and put it in B for now.
Okay, B, The Legend of Zelda B. That's going to be upsetting, I think, to some people, but I don't think it's unfair.
I don't know. Whenever I feel like we're doing these things, especially live, the audience, I think, skews pretty young. I think they're going to be fine with Legend of Zelda and B. It's a good game.
It's a good. We'll put it B plus if it makes people feel better. Okay?
Yes, it makes me feel better. Yes.
Okay. Next up on this chronological list of Zeldas, we have Zelda 2. The Adventure of Link. And this is a controversial game, Jeff.
Yes,
some people
definitely
feel very strongly about this. And compared to the original Zelda, this was a huge departure. And even compared to the Zeldas that followed, this was a huge departure. So how were you feeling about Zelda 2?
Yeah, it's tough for me. I played it at the time, very excited about it because, again, got Zelda right away, Legend of Zelda right away. As soon as I could, when it was like the first year that I had a Nintendo, we played it. We were very blown away by it. And then Zelda 2 came out not too long after, or maybe around the same time, or maybe it was like, it could have already been on store shelves, but like when we went there, oh, there is The Adventures of Link, Zelda 2. We're going to rent this, and I would take it home. Like, this is very different. And at that time, that was normal. Games, the sequels could be very different. Super Mario Brothers 2, very different from Super Mario Brothers 1 and all this stuff. That was pretty normal. But it was like, it was also like, it was obtuse and hard for me to get into. And that has, that first kind of experience with it has tainted my feelings towards it ever since. I recognize now that it is a better game than I ever realized, but it's also one that I've never really been able to get into. So I would probably put it in the D tier, even though that feels pretty harsh. I know for some people really love this game, but that's where it feels right for me.
I would say if we had put the original Zelda in an A, I would maybe be more forgiving with a C, because people have gone back and appreciated the evolution of storytelling. That's one thing that Zelda 2 does well compared to the originals. If you want the narrative, there is some, there's some evolution there. Obviously, it's the side-scrolling perspective. Obviously, things are shaken up in terms of the gameplay that you knew from the original, but there were some good ideas. It's not a just outright bad game. But in the context of Zelda, much like you, I played this for the first time and I was like, what on earth? Because I played A Link to the Past, and then I played The Legend of Zelda, and then I played this. And I was like, what on earth happened here? What's going on?
Yeah, I think it's a bit punishing, and it's also it's a hard game to play without knowing what you're doing. You almost need to be playing with a guide, or have infinite time, which I suppose kids might have had back then. But you need to be playing with a guide mostly, and it's like, so that sense of exploration doesn't feel like it's there, because it's like, no, you're going to go the wrong way, and you're just going to get trashed, and you're going to feel completely hopeless, and you're going to give up. And that's what I did when I played that game, and that's sort of against the spirit of Zelda a little bit to me.
I agree. I am perfectly fine slapping Zelda 2 in the D tier. And it looks like we got a super chat from Nick W, who says, preemptively dropped this, saying Zelda 2 D tier. No argument from us. No argument from us there.
You used your veto power, Nick W, and it's working. That shows, guys, that's the power of democracy. I don't think that's what democracy is. Well, that's what our democracy is. You got the money, you get a vote. There we go,
baby. Hell yeah. America, brother. Next game on our list here, The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past. Jeff, how are you feeling about this? I feel very strong, very, very strongly about this game. But
yeah, okay. This is going to be
Don't piss me off.
Yeah, I love The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. It is not my canonical Zelda from that time. There was another one around that time that I think improved things and did a little bit more, and we'll talk about it eventually. I think this goes in A tier. I think it is very, very good. It is obviously the thing that most people think of as a great Zelda game, and because it is. I think what it does better than most other games, period, is this great sense of pacing and leading you from one thing to the next, and you accomplish something, and then they give you another interesting thing to go do right away, and you're exploring the world while you're going, and the music is great, and the world, you get the dark world, and now everything's different, and it's like, oh, now everything's changed, so I can explore it all over again. It's so exquisitely designed in those regards, but it doesn't, for me, it's not the... I think there are other Zeldas that actually do a lot of these things even better. And some of them were around that same time. Some come far later. So I'm ready to put this in A and kind of be like, okay, there are going to be some S tier Zeldas, but this one actually isn't it.
I would definitely argue for me that this is an S tier Zelda. And we're going to be talking, or I'm going to be talking a lot about blueprint Zelda games throughout this show, because there are always these moments in Zelda's history where you look at that game and you say, this is the blueprint. This is the blueprint for X. Link to the Past was the blueprint for every single handheld Zelda for the longest time. That was the blueprint for the top-down isometric. Every single Zelda that followed for a long time wanted to capture the essence, capture the magic of A Link to the Past. Some of them did it, and like we'll talk about, there are some that you could argue superseded that, but a lot of them couldn't quite reach that level because it completely changed what freedom meant in a video game. And you had all of these tools. And this was long before we had physics, but this is one of the first games that had some sort of pseudo-physics that I remember, being able to interact with the world in different ways depending on what tools you're using. You could set things on fire. There were all these elements and components in this game that just kind of fundamentally transformed what a Zelda could be. What an open world, a rudimentary sense could be even. So for me, this is confidently an S tier. I would say I could live with an A. But you're going to have to really sell me on the isometric Zeldas that are going to be better than this.
Yeah, it's there's not many. I think maybe there are two that are right there kind of vying for it. I think two that pass it. But as it stands, I'm like, it's Link to the Past. If this goes in S tier, it's got to go in S tier. I'm totally. I was willing to accept that early on. For me, it's A tier, but it's very high A tier, right there on the cusp. So it's like if you want to nudge it over with your sort of support for it, I'm not going to stand in the way. It is. There's going to be a lot of games from the Zelda series in the S tier, and that's just the way it is. That's just what this franchise is. If that means also Link to the Past, well, of course it is. I agree with the blueprint argument. It does just come down to me where it's like maybe it's familiarity at this point. The blueprint is so familiar that it doesn't stand out as impressive to me anymore. But I mean, clearly there's a reason that every Zelda game after this, for the most part, was like, we are going to be a Link to the Past, but now we're 3D. And we're going to be Link to the Past, and we're going to have this this slightly different notion in it, but it's still Link to the Past. And there are games that are, some of those great 3D games, they never actually quite met the sort of level that this game got to in terms of establishing that, or having that formula, and also making it just as fun to go through. This one, I think, is actually the best in terms of that. So, yeah, we could put it in S tier.
Beautiful. Okay, I'm glad you're not pushing back too hard there.
No, it's too good of a game.
This is a game I can go back to every single year and replay without problem. There's rarely even moments or areas where I feel like, oh, this segment feels dated in the grand scheme of things. It's a very, in my opinion, it's one of the quintessential, like Symphony of the Night. It's one of the quintessential timeless games that, regardless of when you started playing video games, you can go back to it and appreciate what it did.
Yes.
Next up, another beloved Zelda game, and that's Link's Awakening on the original Game Boy. Jeff, I know you love some Link's Awakening. So, where are you feeling? What are you feeling about Link's Awakening here?
Yeah, so for me, this is the game that taught me what games are. This is the one for me, and it comes out after, as we're doing this in chronological order. It comes out after Link to the Past, and it definitely learned some stuff from that. It's got a lot of the similar visual elements and stuff. It's for the Game Boy. But visually, it's like, it's still kind of right there. In terms of design, it is this dream-like thing, and that's obviously a big part of the game. But they really do a good job of capturing that, and that enables them to get a little bit weird, a little bit quirky, and all that stuff is super fun. But what it really does is a couple things. It has that quest where you're trading things with other characters, and that is like this really interesting that like pulls you through the world to go see all these different corners, and like you're like, okay, I'm gonna go take this can of dog food to an alligator in a house. That's weird. And
what's this monkey doing over here? What's he want?
Yeah, what's monkey? And I'm gonna go get this letter, and I'm gonna give it to. Wait, is that Will Wright? Why is Will Wright in this video game? And then I'm gonna go take the flowers to the goat lady that lives in the town with all the other animal people. And it's like, I'm like I'm not just like visiting these places. I'm getting familiar with them, and I'm like building this string that attaches me to it in a really strong way. And that really helped, and it made all the other stuff kind of come together in that world where it's like, this feels like a real place, even though in the game it's not. The other thing is, this is the one where I think they really nailed. You're going to go into a dungeon. You are going to, I think the dungeons are just so top tier in this game.
Yes.
Especially that second one where I'm like a kid and I'm 9, 10, 11. My brain is starting to finally turn on in my life. And I'm sitting in the back of my parents' car on a road trip. And it's weeks are going by, and I'm like, why can't I pick up the game? I'm like, okay, all right, I'm still at this boss of the second dungeon, and I'm hitting with my sword 100 times. Why isn't it breaking? And it's like, then it just clicks. I got the bracelet in this dungeon. I need to use the bracelet to solve this puzzle. And I pick them up, and I throw them against the wall, and the bottle breaks, and now I can't attack them with the sword. And it's like, oh, the game is teaching me how to play it as I'm playing it. They're not going to ever just tell me. It's teaching me how to do it. And then from that point on, it was like, video games as a whole made sense. And it's like all the dungeons do that throughout that game. It is this is an easy S tier for me, because it's like, that is the thing I've been chasing in games ever since, is that revelation. And this game nails that.
Like you said, when I first played this game, there are those moments you can point to where it's teaching you basic fundamentals of game design as a player, not as a designer. As a player, you're getting that thing. You're getting the reward first off, which is a satisfying feeling. You get into the dungeon, you open the chest. There's the music, and then you get to use that item to evolve the gameplay. And for me, that is one of the things that we've kind of lost in the modern age of RPGs. Is sure, numbers get bigger. You get a cool weapon, and the numbers get bigger, and you do more damage. But we don't see a lot of RPGs that progressively evolve the gameplay as you get deeper and deeper in the same way that games like Link's Awakening do. And so for me, that was the most exciting thing, is getting a new tool and then being like, oh, I can use this to do this throughout the world, or I can use this to attack this enemy this way, or counter this boss this way. And it was just this really amazing way to approach game design on the Game Boy, which is a very basic. You have 2 buttons, you have a D-pad and 2 buttons. That's it. They were able to make this game with something so simple, and much like A Link to the Past, you can still go back and play Link's Awakening, and it still feels fantastic.
Oh yes, absolutely. And that remake is fantastic as well. And then it's like all the interstitial stuff. Where do I go next? And you're walking around the world, and you're like, okay, I'll go check out that thing I saw earlier. And on your way, a ghost appears. It starts haunting you, and now you got to deal with this ghost. Like what? Or you don't deal with the ghost, and the ghost just appears with you for a very long time. You're like, what is going on? And then eventually you solve that. It's another little story about this world. Or you walk back into town after that first dungeon, and the kids are freaking out, and they're like, something's going on. Someone got kidnapped, and you go find out that it's Bow Wow, that little chain chomp in front of the lady's house, got stolen, and you need to go rescue it. And now then after you rescue it, you're carrying around Bow Wow, and it's just chomping everything. And it's like one of the ways to access the second dungeon. It's like, oh, this is like, it's. I saw someone chat, it's like the world felt less cohesive because it is so quirky. And for me, that is actually what makes it cohesive, because it's like, it is so disparate, but they connect the world in all these other enchanting and charming ways, and to a point where it's like, oh, they really thought about this game, and they really built something that I adore. I mean, the walrus that blocks the road, that too. It's like you play the song in front of the walrus. You bring what's her name with you, Marin, bring her with you to come sing to it. There's just so many great moments in the game.
It's one of those games where when I was younger, I thought it was dumb that like Goombas were in it, and I thought it was kind of dumb that you interacted with certain characters in certain ways, and like, this feels silly for the sake of being silly. And I was like, early on, I didn't really wrap my head around it, but the ending, I think, for me, brings all of these elements together. And I get spoiler for a game that's very old. It turns out this was all a dream at the end. You know, the cliche that, oh, it turns out it was all a dream. But that makes everything kind of make sense. And it kind of like humanizes Link in a way that no other Zelda game has, because, you know, he's a hero in his dreams in this. You have the realization at the very end that you're not a hero. You're just this person who's washed ashore. And I thought that,
and there's all these bigger things happening. Like, you're just trying to survive. It's actually a lot like Elden Ring, honestly. There's this god above you. It's like this that's like making all this happen, and you're just trying to get to the next thing so you can get out of this place. And it's but by doing that, you end up disrupting the whole world, and it's it's really good stuff.
All right, well, I will not argue an S on this one. You know, I'd like A Link to the Past more, and I think A Link to the Past is directly responsible for this, but it is still an absolute banger, as the kids say.
Yeah, this the team that worked on this, I think, is the team that would like go on to do they were like Mario Odyssey and stuff like that. There's some real great people that worked on this, and now they're going to be like the as Miyamoto has more and more stepped back, this is the team that's kind of in charge of Nintendo now. I'm like, oh, this is why Nintendo is still up there and still making great games.
Yeah. All right, Jeff, we're coming off 2 S's and things are going to get weird. Our next game is Link, The Faces of Evil, which is a Philips CDI exclusive title. A lot of you maybe don't even know what the Philips CDI is. It was a very short-lived video game console, compact disc console back in the day, and Nintendo partnered with them to do a series of, quite frankly, weird as hell Zelda games. And the first one they did was Link, The Faces of Evil. Jeff, I have watched plenty of videos. I've seen plenty of memes that use stills from this, but I have never actually played this game because I've never owned a Philips CDI.
Yeah, same. I mean, listen, I don't think this is going to be too tough. This is the quintessential F. You just drop it in there because it's only matters because of how bad it is. That's it. And that doesn't mean like, oh, it's so much fun to laugh how bad it is, so let's go put it up. No, it belongs in F. That's where it goes. You just need to know what you're getting into when you go to play these. I remember being morbidly curious about them around that time. Like, there's CDI Zelda games over Philips? So I guess I'll check that out. And then you would always hear more and more like, oh, no, it's trash. It's garbage. Go online. And it was a joke already. So, this goes in F.
Yes. I don't disagree. I'm gonna play a little bit here just for people who haven't seen it for some
Yeah,
context.
let's do it.
But yeah, I've watched entire playthroughs of this. Haven't got my hands on it, but it's unbelievable that it exists. If I'm being honest.
Yeah, we got a show on Giant Bomb called Blight Club, and I do that with Dan Reichert, Mike Minotti, and Mike said he wants to play the really bad Philips CDI Zelda games for his, and so we're not going to let him because he wants to do it. And the whole idea is it needs to be a punishment. But I'm like, I don't really want to play them, so I'm afraid that they're going to hand them over to me at some point.
So Link, the Faces of Evil. Up here, it's most known for its cutscenes, I guess, is probably where you've seen a lot of the
animated, like cartoon animated cutscenes. You've definitely seen the memes.
So I'm just gonna play a few briefs. Oh, here we go.
The forces of evil in Korodai? Check it out. It's easy. You got this map. See?
So obviously inspired by
the Triforce to where you want
Dragon's
to go.
Lair style, but they didn't quite nail the delivery.
Not quite.
So it's not Dragon's Lair in terms of gameplay, though. It is actually a side-scrolling action game. As you can see on the screen here, Link has a very different design. So much like Zelda 2, it's a side-scrolling action game. But it hits so much softer than Zelda 2 in every possible way. So yeah, I'm perfectly fine giving that a big fat F.
Yeah, it's just this is exactly what could go wrong if you don't know how to make a game. It's like, I don't know, make it kind of big pixels and big sprites and stuff like that, and that's what the kids want. And it's like, oh my god, it looks miserable.
That's what the kids want. All right, bright colors. Kids love cartoons, Jeff. We're just
they love CD-ROMs. It's the new technology all the kids are talking about.
It's hot. Kids want the compact discs. Next up, it didn't stop there. All right, the Philips Nintendo partnership. I don't know how it secured itself for so long, but it lasted several years, and we got several games out of it. Next up, we have, you've heard of Link's Awakening. What about Zelda, the Wand of Gamelon?
Yeah, and that came out the same year, right? So they were
back to back.
Back to
back. I'm assuming you also have not played this.
Fuck no.
Wand, I'm just going to play a same gist here, but as the rules state, we have to base it off, what we've seen. Wand of Gamelon, Philips CDI. Oh yeah, it hits though. This tune, dude. This tune hits. So as you can see, same basic idea, but instead of Link, you play as Zelda, which is cool. That's a novel idea. It would be cool in a modern time to get a Zelda-centric game where you played as Zelda. Definitely. It's sad that this is Zelda's legacy, really, as a playable character in a mainline.
Yeah, well, hey, it's on our list. What can we do? Those are the rules.
So yeah, F as well there.
Oh yes, this is it. Literally, let's just say F that.
F.
Yeah.
Wand of Gamelon. F. Philips CDI. Man,
it does look even worse than the Link one, actually.
It somehow does, and that's But nothing looks quite as bad as the next game on our list again, which is a Zelda.
Well, the partnership worked out so well that 2 years later they had to come back and do it again.
Yeah, with Zelda's Adventure. Jeff, this one, when I was doing research for this episode, I had never seen this cover, I had never heard of this game, and I had never seen a single image of it. I had no idea this video game even existed. Were you familiar with Zelda's Adventure?
I mean, as familiar as I was with any of the other ones. It's definitely the least known of the three. But yes, I was like recently like looking into these games. It's like, oh yeah, Zelda's Adventure. There was 3 of those. I always remember the other 2, but yeah, no, there was 3 of them. But I don't know much about it really.
This one, the art direction takes a wild turn. Just like they were inspired maybe by Mortal Kombat. Like
Hell
it
yeah.
looks like they use actual photography to create
like
environments
and stuff.
Yeah,
okay,
rotoscoped environments, rotoscoped characters.
Don't even trust
I mean,
but
that was all the rage back then.
I might have to do some deeper digging to see if I can find a playable version of this somewhere because I don't know, man. This is even compared to the last two that we saw. This game is unreal. The fact that Nintendo
Is this a long play? Is this a long play?
Yeah,
here?
this is a long play. Yeah.
So it's about 3 hours to play it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Zelda's Adventure.
Man.
What a moment in video game history right there. Holy shit. F
Man.
or what? How you feeling about that?
Oh yeah, this another very easy F. Yeah, God, what is it? Diablo? Like this is just. I guess it looks like it actually is trying to play, like it looks like Street Fighter the movie, the game. That's what it looks like. It's like, hey, we're gonna make a Street Fighter game, but we're gonna use actual Jean-Claude Van Damme, and this looks like they did that, but for Zelda, and that's super duper weird and bad, and it should go away. And I want to play it actually kind of now.
Yeah, this is what happens when Nintendo takes the hands-off approach and says, Phillips, we trust your vision for Zelda's Adventure. Get after
notice
it.
they don't trust people very much anymore.
I feel like this has to be the catalyst. The Super Mario Brothers movie and these three Philips CDI games were when Nintendo's like, no, never again. We cannot allow this to ever happen. I don't blame them. Those are all terrible. Just terrible, terrible, terrible video games attached to one of the biggest IPs ever.
Now I kind of do want to like see him through.
Yeah,
get Mike to pick him for my Blake Club game. We'll see.
We got people asking if there's anything worse than F. Sadly, no. But these are all strong. These are all.
Hey, if you donate enough money, we'll see what we can do. All right. If you because you guys get veto power. If you guys feel it really needs to go down there.
Okay. Next up. This is an interesting little relic from history, Jeff. I don't know if you've played this. I have not played this one. It is called The Legend of Zelda, The Ancient Stone Tablets. And this was a pseudo-sequel to A Link to the Past, which existed on the Super Famicom. And there was a satellite radio attachment for the Super Famicom.
The Satellaview, right? This is a Satellaview game or whatever. Is that how they said it?
And this was a 4-part episodic Zelda adventure that you had to download via the radio, Jeff.
Yes.
You had to this was the first
download from the radio. That's how that song goes. Yeah.
You had to download this 4-part Zelda game from the radio, and that is absolutely wild. So,
man, the 90s were a wild time, man. We did all kinds of crazy crap with computers.
So again, I don't think this released in the US. I'm pretty sure this was only
the Satellaview stuff was pretty locked down. I mean, like all the like the Famicom disk system stuff would come over here, but they would just put them on cartridges. These kinds of things, they're just like, oh well. But yeah, they would broadcast them at certain times, and you would be able to download them by making sure that you were online, I guess, there ready to get it onto your storage medium that you had attached to your Super Nintendo. I've never played this. Yeah, but it is basic. I think it's kind of like a Master Quest sort of thing. It's a remix of A Link to the Past, right?
Yep, exactly. It's exactly that. And if my research is correct, you had to play during certain windows, like a radio broadcast. It wasn't that you downloaded it and kept it forever. You could only play it during these weird radio broadcasts.
I think once you turned off your system, it would stop working. Basically, is how it would work. I think.
So yeah, I've never played it. This looks like you said, kind of a remix of A Link to the Past. It doesn't seem like it's doing anything special here. What are you feeling about? What are you feeling about this one? Doesn't look bad, but.
Yeah, exactly. I've never played it. I've been looking at it. I kind of want to try it out, but I feel like we could just put it in D because it's like, well, we already got Link to the Past.
Yeah, we already got Link to the Past at home, all right? Zelda, Ancient Stone Tablets, fun little DLC goes in the D.
Yeah, there it goes. That's where it belongs.
All right, let's get back to some real games here. We went through the gauntlet of stuff that exists and wished we didn't, but now it's time for what some people would consider the greatest Zelda game of all time, and that is The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Jeff, where do you stand with this release? At this point in time, you had played a lot of Zelda games.
Yeah.
For some people, this was their first foray into Zelda, and I think we all have that moment where we have that game that has the impact for us, and for a lot of people, it was this game. For you, had someone who had played Zelda games, how did this land for you?
It was incredible at the time. It was the thing I was most looking forward to. And when it finally came out, I just remember being like, oh my God, I can't believe it's actually here. And it's realizing all of the potential that we had hoped for when we first started hearing about this game and seeing Zelda 64 at Space World or whatever in magazines. and it had way worse, like lower polygon character models for Link and stuff like that. But then finally we got the real thing, and it was like, this is incredibly impressive, and it's Link to the Past, but in 3D and with even more going on, and it's really good. But also at a certain point, I am at a point where now when I go back to it, a lot of the magic has worn off for me, and that doesn't mean it's some sort of a bad game. It's just I'm like, oh, this was really important for its time, and it's lost some of its luster, and so I would probably put it in A tier. I really love it, but it's an A tier Zelda for me personally.
I agree. I know for some people this is going to be controversial, but I agree. It's not a game that feels the best to go back and play necessarily, and that's not its fault. It was innovative. It transformed things. It created Z targeting. Games like Elden Ring and Dark Souls still used to this day. There's so many transformative mechanics. When it comes to 3D game design, it was this huge evolution of the tools that we established in previous Zelda games, but how you bring those into a 3D landscape and how you incorporate actual physics and other components. So it's an amazing game. At its time, during its moment, it was the action adventure game. And, in the grand scheme of things, compared to all the other Zelda games, it's still incredible, but I don't think it hits on the same level as a bunch of the other games we're going to be talking about. So I agree. I'm perfectly fine putting this in A because of the impact. Captain Logan in the chat talks about the blueprint. This is another blueprint. This was the 3D blueprint of Zelda. So that you can't discredit that. It is still transformative. It is still a game that people cite as the reason that they play video games, as the reason they create video games. So it still has impact and importance. But it's not one of my favorites, to be honest. It's definitely not one of my favorite games, and even at the time, it wasn't one of my favorites. But I'm fine with an A. I'm happy with an A.
Yes, I think. I agree with all that. And it's just for me, a lot of times it comes down to going back to it now and kind of putting it into the pantheon of Zelda games today, which is what we're doing. It's A feels right. It's S tier in terms of its importance. I think it's A tier in terms of where it lands as a Zelda game now.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. The rules of this are you can veto if you want. If you're a channel member, if you want to drop a super chat, if you feel passionately and you can sway us to S with some compelling arguments, we'll hear them out. But for now,
absolutely,
that's an A. Next up, Link's Awakening DX for Game Boy Color. So, Jeff, first off, is Game Boy Color even a new console?
No,
is it a new generation?
No, of course it's not.
So does this even count as a new game?
I'm willing to say it doesn't even count. Now it does have a new dungeon in it, the color dungeon. It's not very good. I mean, we could put it on there, but it's not worth much consideration. I would put this in C. This is not the definitive version of this game. The original one is the definitive version, and then if you want to play another one, there's a remake out there. I actually think the color is really bad in this game. It looks really bad and ugly, and I remember being so disappointed in it when I got it, and it was like the game I was going to bring with me to summer camp, and I was going to play that, and I just booted up and be like, this kind of stinks actually. So it's still Link's Awakening, and a lot of people, this was the Zelda game the Link's Awakening game that they played, and so I want to recognize that. But I'm like, it's C tier.
C. So we're gonna go from S to C. Seemed a little harsh.
I mean, if you got something else, for me that feels right, but I'll hear you.
Yeah, I think this was the way I played the game for the first time, was via color. So I wasn't really aware of the differences between the color and non-color version of the game. Like you said, it has the new dungeon, but the new dungeon adds nothing. So we are going to be talking about a few re-releases throughout this show. And so I guess the main questions we'll factor in is, does it do anything new? And does what it actually add to the experience or take away? And it sounds like for you, it just took away from the experience.
Took away. Yeah, absolutely. That original look of the Game Boy game was the more ethereal, dreamlike thing that I needed from that game. And the color was just kind of like bad, just a bad transformation to try to make it look like a game that could have been in color, and it just couldn't have been.
All right, I'm gonna throw it in C because I don't feel strongly about DX. So boom. C, The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening DX C. Next up, Jeff. This is another controversial Zelda moment.
Yeah, definitely.
And that is The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, the follow-up to, like I said, one of people's favorite games of all time. Darker atmosphere, darker tone. There's a lot of changes to this that pull inspiration from the fundamental components of Ocarina of Time, but in a lot of ways evolved the gameplay. And some people didn't really like the gameplay evolutions or a lot of the gameplay decisions even. So where do you stand with Majora's Mask?
I liked it at the time. I don't know if I loved it. I think I actually kind of maybe at the time learned to love it. And the lingering sort of placement it had in my heart after that was like, it was a game that I remember having to force myself to love. But at the end, I was like, man, that was quite a thing. And it's like, it was once again a special game like a lot of these Zelda games are. But for me, I'm kind of teetering between B and C tier. I kind of think I'm gonna lean towards B though. I think it's a good game that does a lot of really smart stuff. It was a really good idea of reusing a lot of the assets from Ocarina of Time, so we can get another game pretty quickly. And in terms of like standing alongside Ocarina of Time, it's a really good complementary product of let's be different, and it nails all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm torn. I am one of the people who likes Majora's Mask a lot more than Ocarina of Time. Like I like Ocarina of Time. It's just not one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
So when Majora's Mask hit, that one really connected with me. So obviously it's the same blueprint as Ocarina of Time. Like you said, it reuses similar assets. It doesn't dramatically evolve the fundamental principles of Ocarina of Time, but the mask system and the way that creates tools to use in the environment, it just made the moment-to-moment gameplay of Majora's Mask feel so much better and so much more engaging. And
yeah, totally.
The time mechanic is a bummer. It's this complex dynamic where I understand from a narrative decision why they're doing it, but I understand why people absolutely hate it. And it seems like that is one of the most divisive things about this game is that like the original Dead Rising. Don't put me on a time schedule. Let me explore the world. And this game is like, no, you got to move. You got stuff to do.
Not about exploration. If it is exploring what is possible to do within that time limit. And it is like you realize pretty quickly once you get into it, it is the time limit isn't as harsh as you think because you're about to do the thing and this is your first time through and you get to the very end and you run out of time and it's like, man, that feels terrible. But then you go, all right, well, I guess I got to go try again. And this time you're doing everything almost instantaneously. You know how to solve everything and you're doing it and you have all this time to spare. And you're like, oh, actually it was kind of cool to get to do all that stuff again and see how much quicker I could do it and how much more I learned.
So for me personally, I'd lean towards A just because I feel like it's at least, for me on the same level as Ocarina of Time. I could settle with the B because I know people have problems with the game and it wasn't as transformative as Ocarina of Time. So I would be happy with the B.
I think let's do B. Let's do B.
Even though I am a heathen who likes it more than Ocarina of Time, I could live with it being in B because I understand it's flawed. But I think really why I connected with it was because it was the first Zelda that felt dark and mature in some ways. Zelda,
yes,
is historically known for whimsy and color, and Miyamoto even talked about, him being inspired by Peter Pan, like a children's character. So this game felt very dark, and it was like, it came at a time when I was like preteen, I think, and looking for the edge, brother, looking for that darkness in my heart, bro.
It's the one with the Omni Link, right? I never unlocked Omni Link or whatever that was called. It has the where you can put on the mask and become all like, you look like you became a Godsmack turned into a person, and like
totally. Dude. So
now we're talking.
For those goth kids, that was it, baby.
Yes,
Majora's Mask. They just hit. You had the poster on the wall, and you were edgy, man. So yeah, B is fine with me. Next up, we have a couple cool games created by essentially Capcom, like an offshoot of Capcom. Another collaboration. We have first up Oracle of the Legend of Zelda Oracle of Seasons. This was a 2-part game, Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages. Jeff, did you play both of these titles?
I played Oracle of Ages, and I got it at the time, again, being very excited as a huge Link's Awakening fan, be like, another Game Boy Zelda. This one's made for the color or this time, so it's like, let's go. This will be exactly what I want. And it left me pretty cool. And I haven't really gone back to it. I intend to. I'm playing Minish Cap for the first time right now, actually. And so I'm like trying to give Capcom Zelda another chance. And but like based on what I know now, based on the way I feel about it right now, I would probably also want to put it in C next to DX. But it's been a long time since I played them. So if you have like fresher thoughts, I'd love to hear them.
That's exactly where I'm at. I remember being so excited for these, and they took just ripped a page straight out of the Pokemon guidebook, and like, oh, we can do 2 versions of these?
Yep.
Hell yeah,
totally.
baby! Red and blue? You mean Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages?
Now these games are pretty substantially different, right?
Yes. So it is a 2-part adventure, just to clarify for people who haven't played. So it is 2 different games, and there are 2 different stories. There are different gameplay systems. So it's not like Pokemon where it's like there's 1 exclusive dungeon in this version and 1 exclusive dungeon in this version. It is 2 standalone games. I never played Oracle of Ages, but I played Oracle of Seasons, and much like you, I was underwhelmed. I don't think it didn't supersede Link's Awakening. It didn't come close to Link to the Past. It didn't do anything that transformative outside of being, hey, this is a color game. And it looked beautiful. You can go back. The pixel art in this game is fantastic. It looks really good. And it's one I'd be curious to go back and play, but I wasn't floored. So yeah, I'm fine with the C on this for sure.
Yeah, sounds good. I do know people like Seasons a lot more. And if I had played Seasons, I'd be happy to rank them separately, but yeah.
Yeah, I did play Seasons, and again, even if that is the better of the 2, then I probably won't bother with Oracle of Ages, which is our next game.
One people
here.
Like more, yeah.
So same C, D.
Yeah, C, yes, C. Yeah, because I'm like that. To me, I glob them together, so I would probably just put it in C.
Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages in the old C tier. All right, next up. Oh yeah, let's get into this one, brother. It is The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker for GameCube. Yeah. Another, I would say, when you're a franchise this big, I feel like every change you make is controversial. And so this was another controversial Zelda release at the time. It's too cartoony. Again, we were just talking about Majora's Mask and being a goth. This is the polar opposite. This is bright. This is cell shaded. This is cartoony. How did you feel about this when it hit?
I was so excited for it when it hit. I think when it was first announced, I was like, I did like a small double take. I was not one of these people that was freaking out about it being changed, but I did a double take where I was like, wait, I thought we were going to get the other one that was going to be like the kind of more mature. Okay, whatever. This looks great. Look at that technology of him looking at things as he runs past, and it's so expressive. And I got on board really quickly. Mike Minotti always points out, he's like, he was excited the minute one. He was so thrilled. And then there were all the uber nerds on the internet at the time just losing their minds about it. And they would call it Zelda with a C for cell shading. It was like, that was supposed to be the insult. This game to me is timeless in a way that a lot of GameCube games are. I think that, also with a lot of these GameCube games, a lot of these Zelda games, it gets an edit later on that I think really helps it even more. But even at the time, this game was amazing. And it was, I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm in this cartoon world and I'm really attached to these characters and I love all these dungeons. And for me, it is of like the Zeldas from this time of going from Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask to this. This is the one that can stick with me the longest because I think it is of the timeless nature of the visuals. And I think they really refined a lot of the gameplay. And I think they really made it feel even more kinetic with the way Link moves around. And I don't know, I was just, and even like the storyline and going on the pirate ship with all the pirate characters. Like I'm just much more attached to a lot of that. And so, yeah, for me, this is probably an S tier.
Probably an S tier. I'm a little torn. I do love this game. And I remember playing it and being completely hooked on the game right away. I love the art style, love the gameplay. It felt so I can't stress how much better this game felt to play than Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Instantly, you pick up the controller, that weird ass GameCube controller, and you're like, damn, this just
they built the game for that controller. Yeah,
this just feels so right, and that made exploring the world that much more satisfying. We're gonna talk about this. Is another common thing for me when it comes to Zelda and Nintendo is that sometimes they have a gameplay idea that falls into a gimmick category more than a actual feature that I want in a video game.
Yes, totally.
Where they just hammer you this game is about boats, baby. You're on a goddamn boat, and you're on a boat way too much in this game. And as we'll talk about the other version later on, but yeah, it made some of the pacing kind of miserable, and it went from like perfect, just moment-to-moment gameplay is everything I want, to just a slog. And it was like this inconsistent dynamic of just pure Zelda in its greatest form, and then a slog. And that was so frustrating. And it like took what could have been like for me an easy S, and I'd lean more with an A for the original version of the Wind Waker, just because
I'm okay with that, especially if we're going to consider the HD version later on. I'm okay with putting this in A because I think that later version is going to answer a lot of those criticisms in some strong ways.
Spoilers, yes. Wind Waker, yeah, A. Fantastic. People,
Yes, that sounds good.
people still don't like Wind Waker for some reason, but man, like you said, you can still go back and play, and it still feels so great to play.
Yeah, timeless. It really is.
Timeless. Okay, next up we have The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, 4 Swords for Game Boy Advance. So this is a basically Game Boy Advance port of A Link to the Past with this multiplayer adventure, 4 Swords for Game Boy Advance.
Right, that you can do with the link cable, and I never had enough friends that would want to play Game Boy Advance games with me to like ever justify getting the link cable and to have them all have their own copies of the game, or maybe they had the share play, whatever it was. So I never really played that version of 4 Swords, although we're talking about playing a version of 4 Swords on Giant Ball right now. Like we got real excited about making that happen. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of like interested to think where you should put where you think we should put this, because I don't know if I have much of an opinion on it.
I'm torn because it's got A Link to the Past that you can play in handheld, and this was the first time you could do that in handheld. So it's again one of the best ways to play it. And when this came out, this was the best way to play A Link to the Past. And so it was the best way to play one of the best games of all time. And so for me, I was like, hell yeah, this is easy S. 4 Swords is like a weird bonus gimmick where it's a 4-player cooperative kind of mini dungeon puzzle game where you link up with 4 other people and you do these puzzles. And it was just a completely side bonus thing. So it was a great game with this side bonus thing. The side bonus thing wasn't on the same level as the original game, but it was just completely optional and a supplement to it. So I don't know. Would it be unfair? I mean, I feel like at least an A.
Yeah, I think let's put it in A, because when we start getting these re-releases, I think if it's a re-release, I think it's fair to say it can be close to the original one, but if it's going to go at the same tier or above, it needs to make some significant improvements. Does that make sense?
That's fair. That's exactly.
This is a great way to play this game. So I'm willing to hear that argument, but I think A feels right to me.
Yeah, it didn't fundamentally transform A Link to the Past. It just gave you a new way to play it and added a bonus game that was not nearly as good. So
yeah.
Next up, we have 4 Swords Adventure for Nintendo GameCube. This is a weird one. This is one of the moments in the GameCube history where you had to connect your Game Boy Advance to your GameCube to play multiplayer.
Connectivity was what Miyamoto would say for years and years. GameCube, Game Boy Advance, connectivity is the future. I always wanted to play this, and I definitely got it working at least once with some friends, and I had an okay time. Because it's like they weren't like super into it, so it was like that kind of brings it down. But I remember it being like pretty impressive, and it's a good idea, and like you can, you're seeing stuff on your Game Boy Advance screen, and there's stuff happening on the TV, and I think it's a pretty cool, fun idea. But I'm like not sure like how far up the list it's gonna go. This feels like BC to me.
Yeah, it's a novel idea. I've always thought the 4 Swords concept, if Nintendo actually gave it a big budget and a lot of investment, could be a really amazing Zelda experience. If you took what people love about core Zelda and you made it 4 players, hell yeah, let's go. But it's always falling short of that. It's always again very gimmicky. So 4 Swords Adventure was neat. Really any game where you like, I have fond memories of this and Crystal Chronicles, because those were the 2 games we played the hell out of where you needed the 4 Game Boy Advances.
Yes.
And you had this mess of cables, you had the GameCube, and you had 4 Game Boy Advances to play this game. And for 4 Swords Adventure, it wasn't worth it. It wasn't really worth all that effort.
No.
So
Pac-Man Versus was worth it, but you only needed 1 Game Boy Advance for that. So
yes, C. I'd even go D, honestly, but I don't feel strongly enough to fight for D.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with D. I mean, if you want to drop it in there, that's fine.
Yeah, all right, you get a D. Sorry, 4 Swords.
That's fine.
And we got a veto from Nick here. Nick W.
Oh, all right.
Who's saying you didn't provide a reason, just S tier for Wind Waker. So Nick, I know you're still in the chat. You don't have to do another super chat. Just hit me with the reason that it's S tier. Because Jeff's already with you. Jeff's on board, so you got to sell me.
Yeah.
You got to sell me on that S tier. So just drop a reason in the chat. I'll circle back to that and follow up with you. But yeah, for me, I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced about that S. All right. This is a game you're playing currently, right? The Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap.
Yes, I am.
The first Game Boy Advance Zelda game.
Yes, and it's It's pretty good. I am it's very fresh. I'm having an okay time with it. Um, I think that Capcom's design language, at least at this time, I know a lot of these people that worked on this game would go on to make like Breath of the Wild and stuff. But at the time, their design language was a little bit incongruent with what Zelda had been before. So I'm playing this game expecting things to work one way, and it's like not quite working, and I need to poke and prod a little bit more than what is actually fun. Um, so for me, I think this game probably go. And this is, I know there's a lot of Minish Cap fans, but I think I want to put it in C because I think it's a good game. It's fun. It's fun. It visually is beautiful. But I just think the design isn't quite there. They really sort of get to the not even to the finish line. They get close to the finish line, and they don't quite get there in terms of building a game that feels as cohesive and as fun to play as a lot of other Zelda games.
Yeah. I will say, if you own an OLED, boot any of the Game Boy Advance games on Switch OLED. Oh my God, they look so good. This game, the color palette explodes. So from a visual standpoint, this game shines. When this came out on Game Boy Advance, I was blown away by the pixel art because it was so good, so rich, so vivid. Especially when the SP dropped and you got that better backlight. This game looks really great. That being said, one of my biggest complaints about a lot of Zelda games is it leans too heavily into a gimmick. A neat idea becomes this unnecessary push. And with this, it was, hey, you can become small. And they did do that way too much to the point where it negatively impacts the flow of the game. It impacts the dungeon design, the level design. So yeah, I liked it. I definitely enjoyed it. Had a good time with it.
Yes, it's a good game. Eslo's like one of the worst side companions, though. I think Eslo, Ezra, whoever it is.
Oh, the hat, the bird hat.
Yeah. I hit the select button to bring up the map, and he talks to me every time instead. And it just tells me completely useless stuff. I really get frustrated. I'm like, man, please just shut up. I hate you so much.
All right, because of that, C, baby, you're getting a C.
There you go.
All right, so Nick followed up here. Let me read Nick's follow-up on why Wind Waker deserves an S. Nick W. says, the story and music are fantastic in Wind Waker. The soundtrack pushes it to S tier. Jeff, do you agree with that?
I mean, I think overall, I agree. I mean, it definitely has like the best ending to any Zelda in terms of like that last moment with Link just stabbing Ganondorf, and that, I mean, that stuff rules. But it's like knowing what's coming, I kind of still want to keep it in A tier, I think. But I don't know. I'm okay with S, and I always have been with this game being an S.
Yeah, I'll throw it an S because I do agree. The music absolutely rips.
Yes,
and that's the rules. Is you make a counterpoint why it deserves it, and if we agree, then here we are. So
there it is.
I do think the HD version is going to also be up here, but I can't argue with that. The music absolutely owns. S. Nick, well fought. Next up, we have The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, which was a Wii launch title. And I have fond memories of this one. Fond memories of this being my like foray into, oh damn, what does a real quote unquote game look like with motion controls? And this was kind of it. So I'm so tired of saying this. I think I'm going to stop from here now. But again, another controversial Zelda game. People, for some reason, don't like this game, and I don't get it, Jeff. So let me know where you stand. I've always liked this game, but a lot of people tell me it's not good. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think so a lot of people treat this one as the quintessential over-explaining Zelda game, and it certainly is that. It has a slow start, and it gets in your way. For me, though, the times that I've played it, I thought that stuff did a really good job at building the world and making it feel like a lived-in place, and you're stopping the goat things as Link, and that felt really good.
Yeah,
and I liked all that stuff for the most part. It's not like Minish Cap by comparison has I think it starts quicker actually, but it feels like more of a slog because it's just not a lot of that stuff's not building much. So, and I think in Twilight Princess it is, and then you get to a good game that has pretty good like some really good dungeons, some pretty good ones as well, and then I don't know. I think the wolf mechanic, a gimmick that actually I don't think they over rely on that gimmick too much. It's just like one of the neat things they're just adding in there. And of course, it's not the best game in which you want your main character that's been around for a long time turns into the wolf. That's of course the Sonic game where you turn into the werehog or whatever. But beyond, keeping that in mind, I still think this is like a strong B for me. But I don't know. What do you think?
I totally agree. This is one of the Zelda games that I've always liked, and it's one of the 3D Zelda games that I've gone back to the most. I really, even to this day, I can go back and still really enjoy what this game was trying to do. Like you said, there's this fine line between a gimmick and a gameplay mechanic. And that's a line that Zelda has struggled to find with some games. I felt like the wolf in this was cool. It added to the gameplay experience. When I was the wolf, I never felt like, oh, here we go, another wolf part. So I thought the pacing for that made it great. So for me, I would be okay even with an A on this one. I really, really like Twilight Princess, but I know that it does have some problems as well in the grand scheme of Zelda.
I'm not against an A, I guess, when I think about it. I really like this game. It's one I want to go back to. They should put it out on the Switch, but who knows?
Let's put some respect on Twilight Princess, all right?
Yeah, I'm down. Let's do it. Let's put an A. This is our list. Try to stop us.
That's right. A for Twilight Princess. People are like, what? The original Zelda's below Twilight Princess? You're goddamn right it is.
Okay, well, that's a little bit crazy, but still, I'm fine. I'm fine.
All right. Jeff. Next up, we have Link's Crossbow Training, which if you bought a Wii at launch, this was the game that came bundled with it, dude. And this was a third-person shooter where you
was it bundled with the Wii at launch? It was like, maybe later on, right? It was bundled with like a peripheral, right?
Oh, you're right. Sorry, this was bundled with the gun, the Wii gun.
Yes, the Wii gun.
That's right.
Yes.
Okay, that's right. So you bought the $20 Wii gun accessory, and you got Link's Crossbow Training.
Yeah, that sounds right.
That's right. Did you play this?
I haven't, but I've always heard it's actually surprisingly good. But I don't know.
It's. I see people in the chat saying F. Spectral saying S++. I don't believe you. I don't think that's how you really feel. It was a game that should have been just a throwaway, terrible game that actually was okay. It wasn't that deep. There wasn't that much content to it, but for a game that came with a peripheral, like a game that you would expect to be bundled in like a box of cereal, like that quality of game, it was okay. It was really okay. I'd say D is fine.
I'm okay with let's drop it in D. That's fine. Yeah.
I played it probably for 5 hours, which is, that's good enough for a D.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a surprisingly long time to stick with a game like that.
Exactly.
I think I played Yoshi's Safari for like 3 hours. So.
Okay, Jeff. Next up, we're getting to some Zelda games that I don't like. If I'm just going to preface that there's a couple of Zelda games I don't really care for, and for the first one is Phantom Hourglass for the DS. Where do you stand with the DS Zelda games?
I don't. No, sir. I don't like them. I definitely tried to. I think they both have something to them that I'm like, okay, there's something here. I want to be into it. I didn't mind necessarily definitely with one of them, maybe both of them. You play with a stylus, right? And you're like swiping. I was mostly okay with that. I just wanted a game that was structurally still like a Zelda game. And Phantom Hourglass has that thing where you're going into the like this main like dungeon. You go back into it over and over, and it feels so rote and boring. That I overall I feel it was a really disappointing game. And you know what? The first letter of disappointing is D. I could maybe be talked into an F. But I think there's another one following up this that I would kind of want to put an F more. So yeah, I'm gonna say D for this one.
I think you and I are on the exact same page. I don't know what happened during the DS era of Zelda, but they thought like, okay, we need to mix up Zelda. They were sitting in a boardroom like, all right, scratching down ideas on a notepad. Like, how do we mix up Zelda? We don't want to change too much, but we want one thing that people associate with this game. Like, more than anything, we want people to look at this cover or look at this commercial and say, oh, that's the Zelda with the hourglass, or that's the Zelda with the train, or that's the Zelda with the boat. And like, there was this era where they're just like, we need a gimmick. All right, hit me with the gimmick. And so again, this is one where the gimmick is not enjoyable. It's not enjoyable at all. So D, perfectly happy throwing this in D. I was really disappointed considering how great the DS library was and how many amazing Nintendo games are on the DS. For Nintendo to kind of fumble with Zelda consistently on the DS, I thought was weird.
Yeah, and they could have just done a good traditional Zelda game. Them feeling the need to sell the features of the DS. That's something they would eventually get away from in a lot of things, but it took them a long time to get over those lessons. Yeah, we're the only company that knows how to use our system and all its features. Like, you don't need to do that with, especially with
No.
Zelda. Zelda should maybe be Zelda first, and a system like defining sort of game second.
Next up, The Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks. Where are you at with this one? Another DS Zelda that, for me, misses the mark massively.
Yeah, I think this is beyond disappointing. I think this is a bad game. I think this goes in F. I really, really, really disliked playing this game, which is, I love trains. I think trains are, whenever I see a train in anything, I get real excited. I'm like, yeah, let's do a train level. Hell yeah. A whole game based around trains. Link in a train? Look at, he looks so cute. He's got the conductor or the engineer hat on or whatever. Let's go. No, let's not go. Let's actually walk away very fast from this very bad game.
Yeah, I'm with you. This was a direct attack on anyone who didn't like the boat segments of Wind Waker, and they just quadruple down in the worst way possible. The train segments where you're driving along the track getting absolutely bombarded, terrible. The worst moments in any Zelda game. Ignoring the Philips CDI ones.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely hated this game. I was, I was willing to give them the benefit of the doubt with Phantom Hourglass. Went into it, I was like, okay.
Same.
Not every single one.
It was fine. It was, not fine. It wasn't great, but it was fine compared to this, at least.
Exactly. Yeah, it wasn't offensive. It was good enough. Didn't upset. This game upset. This is one of the few Zeldas I didn't finish. I was like, no, if this is the game, I'm out. This game is so miserable. F for me.
Got to do what we got to do when it comes to Spirit Tracks. It's got to know its place.
I'm sorry to do you dirty, but you're right next to Zelda's Adventure. I just need you to know where your place in the world.
They both are like Phantom Spirit. It's like I guess that was like because you had like indirect control, right? And that's how they explained that a little bit. But yeah, right.
All right, another Wii Zelda game, The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. This was one of the premier titles for the Wii Motion Plus, which was the more fine-tuned motion controls for the Wii. I remember going to a midnight launch. I had the collector's edition with the gold Wiimote pre-ordered with the Wii Motion Plus included. So I was ready, dude. I was coming off the Twilight Princess high. I was so stoked for a new Zelda on Wii, and then it hit. So I'm curious to see where you stand. We're going to be talking about the other version as well. So, but before we talk about that, where did you stand with the launch version of Skyward Sword for Wii?
I like it. I liked it. I definitely did. I'm realizing now, looking at this is 2011. I keep saying, I've been doing this job for 10 years, been doing it at least 12 years because I got this game for review, and I remember getting that gold copy version and having that be my Wiimote for a very long time. I like this game. It is it's good. I don't know if it's great. The things I like about it are some of the things that people I think complain about. I like that the world it's a bunch of dungeons like normal, and then every sort of adventure to get to the next new dungeon is like this dungeon but outside of the dungeon. So it's like you have all these puzzles you need to figure out. And I'm like, oh, this is what Zelda is supposed to be, right? It's just a bunch of puzzles, and now they're bringing the dungeon puzzles outside of the dungeons. That's a great idea, and I had a good time with that. It's not a game that like stuck with me very much. And it's one that I feel like definitely is way too long and sort of wore out its welcome there near the end. Not that I ever was like, oh, I hate this, but it's definitely something where it's like, I'm done with it. And I wish this game would be done. So I think I want to put this one in B, but I'm like teetering on a C maybe, but I think B. I don't like it as much as I like Twilight Princess. That's for sure.
This is a game I've gone back to 5 or 6 different times because day one, I did not like this game. I really, really, really did not like this game. And it was this extreme roller coaster of, there are moments where it's great. The dungeons are great. And so it was this high. I would do a dungeon, I would be reinvigorated on this game. I'd be like, yes, Skyward Sword is still a fantastic Zelda. It is hitting the right notes that it needs to hit. And then we get to a big open space. I could not stand the open spaces because it was like Ocarina of Time, but in a more modern setting. So it was still very empty, still very bland, still very unappealing. There wasn't much to look at. It was just a big open field, and then you would go to the dungeon. And it was a big open field, and then you go to a dungeon. And then you'd ride the high of completing the dungeon, fighting an epic boss, and then it would go back out to like what is a bulk of the game. And it would just absolutely destroy the pacing of it. I wasn't in love with the motion controls. I didn't really
No.
despise them in the same way I think a lot of people did. So that wasn't the biggest issue for me. It was the fact that I didn't like the open areas, and I felt like I agree with you that it really hurt the pacing and really bloated the game in a way that it didn't need to be bloated, because those open areas to me didn't add anything of value.
Yeah, right, yes. So those part like I don't even like register those in my brain anymore because they were such just like filler content. It really was just this space with nothing in it, and they would eventually like they would figure some stuff out like how to do that with the Zelda franchise. But here it was meaningless, and you're right, mostly would just get in the way.
So
but yeah, go ahead.
I could do C, but I'd personally lean towards D for this one. But
Um, I think let's put it in C because I still had I think I still mostly enjoyed this game. Actually, I thought I found a lot of stuff to enjoy about it. Even though I think that some of its downsides are really they're really big bummers. Yeah.
yeah, again, I don't hate this game. It's just one of those games where the problems to me are just so glaring that it's hard to overlook. But there is a lot of good. That's the most frustrating thing to me about Skyward Sword, is that the moments that are great or really stand out. And so it's kind of whiplash when you have that back and forth of, oh damn, this rips, and then here we go, back into a goddamn field. Next up, we have Ocarina of Time 3D. We're going to be doing both of the 3D games throughout this. Again, we talked about this earlier. When we talk about these re-releases, does it add anything new or transformative to the experience? And is it a better or worse way to play the game? And that's how we'll rank it. So how do you feel about the Ocarina of Time 3D?
I think Ocarina of Time 3D is actually the right way to play this game. It's really well done. They make some small edits to a game that didn't need a ton of editing. But it's really well done, and it at least goes in A tier alongside it. And I think this is the one maybe I could. I hear the argument. This is the one that goes in S tier. But for me, I put it in A tier.
I agree. I'm with you 100%. It deserves to be at least on the same level because,
yes.
Not only was it like a cool way to play it because you could play it handheld, but it also looked a bit better as well. Like it was a better looking way to play the game. So. And I think I don't remember what the quality of life features were, but I think there were some minor changes to the controls.
Yes.
So
yes, they definitely made some like improvements. That's like, oh yeah, that does make it a much better experience. Yeah, but I can't pick them out of my brain right now.
Next up, we have Four Swords Anniversary Edition. So this was a DSi, the digital only download, basically a remaster for the DS of the original Four Swords that added a single player mode and some new content. Did you play this one, Jeff?
I played a little bit of this one, but not much. It definitely was like, oh, this is a pretty okay experience, but also not a memorable one. And it's not like, it definitely is not a great game. So I based on what I know, I would probably put it in like C.
I'm fine with the C because especially when you strip away A Link to the Past, you realize how kind of mediocre Four Swords really was. When it was just a bonus fun thing that came with A Link to the Past, you're like, all right, cool. That's something to mess around with every once in a while.
Yeah.
But when that's the core game, you realize that while the idea is fantastic, the execution isn't that great. So yeah, this is C. It's, again, not offensive, and it looks great. The remaster was really pretty to look
exactly.
at. Ooh, the next one. I'm excited to talk to you about this one. And that is The Legend of Zelda, A Link Between Worlds. So this, we talked about the DS Zelda's not quite hitting the mark. The 3DS Zelda that they dropped, that hit. Boy, that hit.
Yeah, it did.
How do you feel about A Link Between Worlds?
This is one of the best games ever made. It is so playable. It is so instantly fun. It gives you that traditional Blueprint Zelda experience, and then it also gives you a little bit extra freedom that makes it all feel that much more meaningful as you're going around exploring the world. And then it just is so snappy to control, and it feels so good to just move Link around. And its gimmick is a good gimmick that is like, you're going 2D and you're getting pasted up against the wall, and it doesn't get in the way. It's just a fun little mechanic that's part of some puzzle solving. It is phenomenal. It's the kind of game where you have a little bit of a vacation time. It's Christmas, and you're like, oh man, there's my 3DS. I'm gonna go pick that up. What do I have on here? Oh yeah, Link Between Worlds. I'll boot that up again. I'll just play a little bit, and next thing you know, you've played through it yet again because it's just so sticky. you just can't stop. You can't put it down. It pulls you back in and it keeps you there because you just want to get to the next thing. You want to unlock the next thing, which is what Zelda's always done. This one has just done it better than any other ones that are in this sort of style. It's the easiest S tier actually for me so far.
Easiest S. Well, I'm
Yes.
not going to disagree. I love this game, and the first time I played it, I beat it in 2 sittings because I was just so enamored by it. And again, it's a successor to A Link to the Past in a lot of ways, but they have that really interesting dynamic of the 2D. And like you said, that could have been a gimmick, and it could have been something where I was like, oh, here we go again. Nintendo just has to get in the way of their own game design by forcing this down your throat. But they do it in a way that's clever, and it's like a platforming dynamic that it's not used too much, but it's used enough to be meaningful to the game. So I enjoyed it. I thought the dungeon design was fantastic. I thought the world was fantastic. And in terms of like an isometric 3D style Zelda, not only does it look beautiful, it's one of the best playing as well. So love A Link Between Worlds. Fantastic game. Definitely down to throw that in the S.
Yep. That's tier
S,
game.
baby!
If anyone hasn't played that game, you just pick it up. I guarantee you're going to fall in love with it.
Remaster that for Switch. All right. Remaster them all for Switch.
That one for sure needs to be put on Switch so they can have like a single screen version of it to like let it live on forever on a single screen system so they can keep bringing it back in the future. If it stays as a 3DS game, it's like, man, it might be stuck on the 3DS for a very long time because they won't want to do the work to make it a single screen game.
Yeah, because we're like 5 years away from that game kind of being forgotten about. If it's only going to be on the 3DS, a lot of people won't bother, and you're not going to be able to find it. So, yeah, I hope. There's a lot of DS and 3DS games that I'm worried will be stuck there forever, and this is one that would be a huge bummer.
Yep.
Next up, we have Wind Waker HD for the Wii U, man. The Wii U, it had a lot of great games. A lot of the great games were better versions of games you know and love. One of those being The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker HD. So for me, I was going to do A for GameCube version, S for this one because they fixed all of the stuff I didn't like about the boats.
Yep.
So,
I think I agree with that. It's it also is just it takes a timeless game and makes it look even better. So yeah.
Wii U, long live the Wii U, baby.
Yeah, Wii U supremacy.
S tier. No arguments there.
I just got my Wii U plugged in again, and that's like the one I like booted up. I'm like, I should just play it. Although I'm like, I can put it on the Steam Deck too, but no, I'll just play it on the Wii U.
Play it in native, the native experience.
The way it was meant to be.
Next up, we have Hyrule Warriors, which was a weird kind of spin-off that was basically Dynasty Warriors, but set to Legend of Zelda. The first one dropped on Wii U. Did you play this, and were you a fan of this?
I think I was, but it's not one that I was like, I felt the need to like see through or complete. It was fun to pick it up, be like, wow, this actually works. And they put a bunch of ideas, there's Zelda ideas into one of these games. And so I had a good time with it, but it's not something I like love by any means or felt the need to ever go back to really. And when Age of Calamity came around, kind of the same thing. But for this one, it's like, I probably would put this in C or D. I definitely don't dislike it, but it's not for me also.
I'm fine with the C. It's one of those games, the map screen in the original S tier. That pixel art map, ooh, man, that felt so good to look at. I really loved that. The gameplay was tight. If I remember right, the original was 60 FPS on Wii U as well, so it felt really good to play. And it was really cool seeing all of these iconic characters from Zelda you never got to play as, like being playable characters. So it was just fun. It was a fun novelty experience. I enjoyed it. Wasn't transformative. It's pretty much Dynasty Warriors. If you love a good Dynasty Warriors, have at it. If you don't, you're not going to enjoy it. But I love
like
me
a
some
good Dynasty Warriors. But what does that really mean in the end?
That means it's a C.
Yes, that's what it means.
All right, next up we have Nintendo going back to the well once more with the Four Swords Blueprint on 3DS, and they dropped a little ditty called Triforce Heroes.
Yeah, I really wanted this. I wanted these concepts to work eventually, and even this one I feel like didn't quite get there.
Yeah, hit me with it. How do you feel? Where's it at for you?
I've definitely played this one a couple times. The first time I played it though, and this is the one that sticks with me most, was at E3 in Nintendo's booth, and I was just like, yeah, I get it, I see it, and it's just like, man, I hope that the final game is this, but it's like much more robust and it has a lot more going on, and it kind of didn't. It just was once again. Here's the idea. You're doing Zelda stuff, Zelda puzzles and Zelda combat, but together. and then it didn't amount to much more than that. And so this one also feels like a C or D.
I'm fine with giving this a D. It's, again, I love the premise. I really love the premise of Four Swords, of a multiplayer kind of collaborative Zelda game. It's a great idea, and I think that's why they keep going back to the well. And this one was developed by Grezzo
Grezzo is what I say, yeah.
Yeah, Grezzo, the guy, the team who did Ocarina of Time 3D, Majora's Mask 3D.
Yep.
So they did an amazing job with that, and it looks really great. It's really great 3D design on the 3DS. But it's so shallow. It's just a really it's kind of like a party game style experience that doesn't amount to much in like something you want to return to. So it's a game that, for me, I played for about 2 days and moved on. And it wasn't even like long sessions. I was playing with friends for, I don't know, maybe a total of a couple hours. And like, all right, we get it. Like it could have been cool. It could have been a hit, but it didn't get the attention that the Four Swords franchise has ever needed to really thrive.
Yep, I agree.
So, yeah, I'm down with the D on that one.
Let's do it. Yep, D.
D! All right, next up we have another 3DS not remake, but remaster, and that is Majora's Mask 3D. Again, I would argue this is the definitive way to play Majora's Mask right now.
Oh, yeah. Yes, this is the right way to play this game as well. I still don't know if that puts it into like the next tier. So we have Majora's Mask in B tier right now. I don't know if this gets to A tier. Maybe it gets it a lot closer, I think, actually. I think, again, I'm like open to the conversation, but I think it slots in right next to B. Or right next to Majora's Mask in B.
Okay, if you're willing to give me the A, I'm going to take it, okay?
Okay, yeah, no, I love it. Let's do it, yeah.
All right, Majora's Mask 3D, that's getting the A. Because, again, for me, it hits.
I mean, the game looks so much better, and they make a lot of improvements to actually playing that game. I like it a lot.
Next up, another Wii U re-release, and that is Twilight Princess HD. So we both like Twilight Princess. Does this do anything to negatively impact it or boost it that's worth mentioning?
I think it's just, I think honestly, bringing those games, making them HD, I like that. The sort of shimmeriness of the Wii, a lot of Wii games that this game had on the Wii, that was. I didn't actually always love that, and I think the HD version actually make it more sense. It's like this is a much more crisper looking game, and then that stuff kind of feels like a mist instead of just like this weird graphical shimmer. And so it's like that alone goes a long way for me and make me like, man, I enjoy looking at this game more than I ever did before. But I don't know. I think it probably just goes in the same tier again.
I agree. It doesn't. Yeah. It's a better way to play it. If you can play it on Wii U, do it. And
they always make great edits to Zelda games when they remaster them.
Nintendo, please put this and Wind Waker on Switch. They need to be on Switch. So
people could stop asking me for it. Yeah.
Because I think outside of that would be, this is the best way to play it. And again, so it doesn't do anything transformative. There was like, I don't even remember what the amiibo gimmick was for this one. There was the wolf amiibo that did something in the game. We'll talk about another one that did something really annoying. Next up, the next game we're going to be talking about here, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. This was a long time coming. It took a long time to make this game. Originally, it still did end up launching on the Wii U, but it seemed like maybe it was going to be the Wii U's premier Zelda, and it didn't come until the very end of the Wii U's life cycle and launched with the Switch. So, again, this is another game that I consider to be a blueprint game for what the next several Zeldas, I imagine, will look like. How did you feel when this hit, when you played this for the first time?
It was magical. It was me like having a sort of realization that Nintendo really can reassess and then break through to the next level, and not by doing something different. And that's going to be a common thing a lot of people say about Breath of the Wild, is that it is a great game, not really Zelda. And it's just flat out wrong. It's wrong on the account of this is clearly most inspired by The Legend of Zelda, the original game, where it's like, let's just put you in a world and say go. And that's this game. And then it's wrong in that the other side, the other thing people like is, oh, the dungeons and stuff. It's like, yeah, okay. There aren't dungeons, but the thing that happens in dungeons is what we talked about with Link's Awakening, where you're in there and it clicks. You got this new thing. How do I use this new thing to solve the problem that's right in front of me? And what Breath of the Wild does is it says, no, here's a bunch of tools, and you're going to be having those clicky moments where things piece together. Like, I could be using this to do this here all the time. It's going to happen everywhere because the physics and the chemistry system in the game are so dynamic that you're going to be constantly having these creative moments of these outbursts of creativity, and that is quintessential Zelda. And it's a game that has done that stuff actually better than anything else ever, period, so far. Nothing beats it at that stuff. So, again, another one of these ones where this is one of the best games ever made. This is actually now even more the easiest S tier, even above Link Between Worlds.
Preach it. Breath of the Wild. There's a lot of people who, in hindsight now, are saying that, well, actually, it's not that innovative because X game did this, or Skyrim did this, blah, blah, whatever open world RPG you want to try to downplay the impact of Breath of the Wild. It did things that had never been done, first off, and just generally speaking, in a video game. And it, not only that, stuff like Skyrim, it did better. It did so much better than the things that came before it, and it evolved gameplay in a meaningful way to the point where you look at Elden Ring, which is universally considered one of the greatest games of all time. There is no planet where that team would deny that Breath of the Wild was not an influence.
Absolutely
There's
not.
no planet whatsoever. And that game, again, much like Breath of the Wild, but now you're going to have people look at Elden Ring and say, well, Breath of the Wild did it, so it's actually not that original. No, that's not how these things work. Rarely does an idea come out of the ether with nothing pulling from it and just be a standalone thing. It's always iterative, but it's what you do with that iteration that makes it impactful and makes it important. And I remember playing Breath of the Wild on the Switch. So first off, the Switch at the time was just a wild concept. Being able to play a big, huge game on this handheld device, that was huge. And then to play the biggest, most ambitious Zelda game ever made on it. And then to have those moments of discovery that you touch on, where you understand the physics click. You roll a big ball down a hill and see it destroy a building. You're like, oh, or when you figure out you can ride on your shield, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think the game really ever tells you that, or it doesn't tell you.
Yeah, it doesn't really tell you anything.
You just
lets you discover it.
Exactly, and you're just discovering, and then it's just 60 hours of discovery, and you're still, again, what I love most about Zelda in the world of RPGs, and you could argue, oh, well, it's not an RPG, it's an action-adventure game. I don't want to have that conversation.
Yeah,
but what I love about it is that it's gameplay evolution over everything else. It's not stats, it's not big numbers, it is gameplay evolution. And again, a lot of modern RPGs fall into the trap of, okay, big numbers, better gear, but it doesn't mean anything for you in terms of gameplay outside of you can take more damage and do more damage. Breath of the Wild, these tools, this arsenal was just one thing after another. And that's why even 5-6 years later, we still see videos of people doing things we've never seen before. You see the wild compilations online of people doing ridiculous things with the physics engine because the game is just, it's special. Whether you like it or not, it's not even my favorite Zelda game. But it is an undeniably special video game, an undeniably important video game. And I will not, humor the folks who are like trying to downplay what the impact of this game meant for the landscape of gaming right in this current age.
Yeah, I mean, it is the most influential game to come out in the last 5, 6, 7 years. And you talk to developers, none of them are going to deny that. And then and that's going to change here now that Elden Ring is here. And now Elden Ring is going to make people realize, oh, it's not just Nintendo that can do this and even make it better. But it like the exploration stuff that Breath of the Wild does of just setting you there and saying, okay, instead of telling you that something is important, we are going to let you look around and decide that something is important. And that little twist of something is just puts it in a completely different world than what Far Cry and some of these other games are doing, where maybe they had interesting worlds to look around in. They wouldn't ever give you the chance to do that. They're like, no, here are all the waypoints. We don't ever want you to feel like you don't know what to do next. And Breath of the Wild's just like, no, we're going to let you decide what to do next. And however you get there is up to you. And that is, it's so refreshing, but it also makes me feel more connected to the world. And then the complaints are usually going to be a couple things. It's going to be the climbing up wet walls is you can't do it, and then the weapon degradation. And these are actually good choices. It's the world pushing back against you to force you to think creatively and to get in the flow of things. And sometimes things are in a world that pushes back against you. Also, something that doesn't really happen a lot of times in video games because developers are afraid of that. This game does it. And what happens is you're supposed to like either find a way to persevere and get around it, or just let it push you away. And like, okay, well, I'll go try something else for now, and I'll go discover something else in this world that actually makes doing this easier later. And it's like, okay, both of those things are viable, and the game is brilliant for enabling you to sort of have this conversation with it. It's a masterpiece.
It's an absolute masterpiece. What I love, some of my favorite games ever, are the games where you start off as just a nobody, a worthless, weak nobody who has garbage weapons, garbage gear, garbage health, but you can face anything you want. You can go in any direction. You can do anything. Much like you touched on, the original Legend of Zelda was that blueprint in a lot of ways, where you go out and you discover, I shouldn't be here. Or if I'm going to be here, I'm going to have to really overcome some adversity to tackle this beast. And so as you progress, obviously you get more powerful and you get more tools, but I just love that empowerment you get as a player to decide where you want to go, how you want to tackle things, and what's most important to you. And that's one thing that Elden Ring does incredibly well, and that's something that Breath of the Wild does incredibly well, is that you kind of move the story along. And that's so important to me and what I want from a video game.
Yep. I mean, it's moments like coming across the first like white Lionel up there in like the really dangerous parts of the map, and like, okay, what do I do here? Or whatever color it is, I can't remember. But it's like, man, it's so scary, but it's also exhilarating. Like, should I go fight it? Should I sneak around it? And one of the ways I described it in my review back then was like, it's like Minecraft, but if like a Minecraft world was designed by Nintendo. So it's like over every hill, there's another little fun thing to get. And it's makes all that exploration feel that much more rewarding. Because even if it's a DQ seed or whatever it was, it's like, yeah, okay, that's not much, but it feels like, okay, the developer knew you would end up here and you would want to feel rewarded. And you got something. And then occasionally you're going to go on the back of this god deer thing, and you're going to be able to ride it around for a while. And it's only in this one spot, rarely every once in a while. It's like, oh my God, this game is magical.
S. Big ol' confident S for Breath of the Wild.
That's right.
Slap that down. I got to move. Sorry, I accidentally put Triforce Heroes in F. It's not quite that low.
It's not quite a CDI game.
Okay, boom. All right, next up we have Cadence of Hyrule, which is another cool spin-off, basically a Crypt of the Necro Dancer, Legend of Zelda crossover. Are you a big rhythm game fan, and did you play this one?
Yeah, I like a lot of rhythm games. I like this game. I think that this game is like, it's pretty good. It's not as deep as you maybe want. It's easy to sort of figure out a couple of weapons to use, and then the whole game is like pretty, it's not much to overcome at that point. But it's got a kicking soundtrack, and it is fun when you get into it. So it's like, I kind of want to like, I was like, maybe this is like a C game that moves up to a B for me.
That's where I'm at. I didn't love it, but I wanted to love it so bad because the music is so good. And when you get into the
killer soundtrack,
you get into the rhythm and you get into the groove, and you have the moments where you're feeling the game and it's whirl bob and weave to the beat of the song. Those feel great. And then when you're not doing that, or you fall out, then it's kind of frustrating. And so I'll give it a B. I think
I think B. I mean, it sounds so good. And it looks great, and the world's alive, and it's a fun game to play, even if it's not a great game to play.
Cadence of Hyrule. I'm so stoked for. I'm blanking on the composer's name, but huge Zelda fan, and to be able to have a canonical release in the Zelda universe probably had to be just absolutely incredible. Next up, we have Link's Awakening, the remake for Nintendo Switch. I'm curious to see where you stand on this, because you're clearly very passionate about Link's Awakening.
Yep.
And this was a just full ground up remake, 3D engine of this classic game.
Yeah, I think this is another example of a really smart edit, but also this is like the most full remake that they've ever done with a Zelda game. At least unless something's slipping my mind, but it's is really good. It stands up like on its own. I think the original Link's Awakening is still a game worth going back to, and this new take on it that has this sort of like more toy-like look to it, which does another thing that's like add to the dreaminess quality. It's really well done, but it is different. Like the first one's kind of got this almost spooky, ethereal vibe, and this one's got this toy-like, whimsical vibe, and both are they are valid, and I appreciate both at this point. Where I'm like, I could go back to either one of these, and depending on what mood I'm in. So this one does not lose at any step, I think, from the original Link's Awakening, and I think it's probably the game. It's like if someone wanted an introduction to Zelda, and I'm like, okay, well, you probably should go play Link Between Worlds. But if you want like another game right after that to see what else this franchise can be, go play Link's Awakening for the Switch. That's probably right where I'd put it. And for me, that like keeps it right up there in S tier.
I absolutely agree. This is such a gorgeous remake, and it's such a creative remake in the sense that it is one-to-one in many ways, all the ways you want it to be, but it still feels completely different. So when you go, like you said, it stands alone. You can go back and play both versions, and both versions have a feel and a style to them. I absolutely adored the decision to do the toy kind of whimsical style. I want more games to do this. I want to see Mother 3 in this style. I think this art style is incredible. I think it adds to the character and the quirkiness of all the alligator character, the monkey character, all these weird, goofy characters that you encounter in the original. They feel more at home in this one, I think, than the original because of, again, just the design decision that they really committed to in a big way. So yeah, I'm fine giving this an S for sure. This is incredible.
Yeah, also the stuff like the quality of life stuff, just like making like the some of those buttons. I think they put the jump upgrade. They give it a dedicated button and stuff like that, and like that's just smart.
S baby. All right, next up we have Hyrule Warriors: Age of Calamity.
Yeah, I played a little bit of this. I don't know.
Man, it ran like complete garbage. Like normally performance doesn't. It's not like a deciding factor of whether or not I love a game or not. But in this case, it made the game feel bad to me. It made the game hard to play.
Yeah, so, it's also it's a little bit less. I don't know, less fun just because there's less. They're pulling from fewer Zelda games, so it's like overall I'm like, this is one I want to go back to even less than I want to go back to Hyrule Warriors. So I'm like, where did we put a Hyrule Warriors? Was that a D?
C, I think.
So now I would put Age of Calamity in D.
Let's slap it in a D. Yeah, it's not a bad game. It's
a lot of people really like it, and that's But I mean, I think for on this list, it's a D tier Zelda.
Yeah, especially the base game. If you buy all the DLC, you get more characters and you get more content. But compared to the original Hyrule Warriors, which was a huge package, this just feels really light in terms of content. And then the performance it's such a bummer. It's such a bummer. All right, and then the final game on our list is Skyward Sword HD, which, again, when Skyward Sword first came out, a lot of people were harsh on it. A lot of people really didn't like it. There was a lot of negative energy surrounding this game. And much like a lot of Zelda games that have been re-released over the years, this has people reconsidering where they stand with Skyward Sword. And there were some quality of life changes. They removed the necessity for motion controls. Do you think this fundamentally improves the experience in a way that would bump it up a tier or...
No, I think it's. I'm glad it exists. I'm glad that they've made a version of this game just straight up that you can play without motion controls. And there's some things they have to do to make it kind of awkward to play. Then it's like, not that it's bad. It's just like, okay, right. They had to like come up with some solutions here that aren't ideal. But it's still like it's kind of impressive. Like, okay, cool. We have this game now preserved in a way where they're going to feel comfortable re-releasing it a bunch of times. So we'll just kind of always have it. And I appreciate that. But that's where I'm at. I appreciate this. I tried to play it. And I'm like, no, thanks. I don't want to play through it again. I liked it fine the first time, but I'm probably never going to play this game again.
Yeah, I think it can just go, what do we have it in? C, D? What's C, right? C.
Yeah, do we pop it in C? I mean, with this, I'm fine with this going either in C or D. Yeah.
All right, yeah, let's just throw it in C. We'll keep it. It's a better way to experience this game, I think, overall.
Yeah,
it's 60 FPS. You can fast travel if you buy the Amiibo. I'm like, that was a choice.
Right, yeah, God, that controversy. Another controversial Zelda game.
God, that's a franchise rife with controversy. All right, Jeff, now that we're at the end here, The final
Yes.
part of our tier list here is to crown the Zelda game. We have to crown the S'est of the est, the best Zelda that has ever been made thus far. So I'm curious to know what your pick is for the best Zelda.
I think if I'm like, okay, I could go a couple directions with this. I mean, I think Breath of the Wild feels like the Zelda game right now still. I also think, Link to the Past is clearly one that is a lot of people just view as the Zelda game. And then I don't know, but I kind of feel like maybe there is a common ground here where it's like the one that I just most easily would recommend to anybody is Link Between Worlds. It is a follow-up to Link to the Past. It has some of that freedom that you begin to get and like the stamina system that you begin to get with Breath of the Wild and stuff like that. It's just such a playable game that I kind of want to. Yeah, listen, Link's Awakening. It's another one where I'm like, yeah, go play that. But and Link's Awakening on the Switch also very playable, very easy. Like it's a breezy playthrough. You're gonna pick it up. You'll be done in 5-6 hours at the most. And it's like that's a really fun playthrough. But I think A Link Between Worlds is the right answer here. But I'm interested to hear what you think.
I would say you can't have A Link Between Worlds without A Link to the Past. And outside
that's definitely true.
Outside of the 2D mechanic, I don't know that for me it did anything transformative in a way that makes it like this is quintessentially a better isometric Zelda game than A Link to the Past, which I think a lot, if we look at the isometric Zeldas that followed A Link to the Past, they all use similar mechanics and features and fundamentals, zones. A lot of the zones in A Link Between Worlds are pulled straight from A Link to the Past.
Yeah, it's a direct sequel, basically.
It's an incredible game. It's such an incredible game. But for me, when I look at like Zelda, when I look at the things I love most about Zelda, even Breath of the Wild, even the things I love most about Breath of the Wild, a lot of that is rooted in what I love most about A Link to the Past. So there's three. I agree. I think the three picks for me for the best would be Breath of the Wild, A Link to the Past, and A Link Between Worlds. I would be happy with any of those. My pick would be A Link to the Past, just because of, again, it being this blueprint that has been kind of echoed throughout the history of the franchise. But,
yeah, it does feel like the sort of the mascot of this franchise too. It feels like the one that's like out there, and like if you were to make an encyclopedia of Zelda, you would put that game on the cover. It's like the number one, the most bolded entry, that sort of stuff. So I'm okay with Link to the Past. It's definitely the one of the first ones that popped in my mind when you posed that question. So it honestly probably is the right answer in the long run.
It's tough. It's a hard question.
Oh yeah, totally.
And it's something that I've had internal debates about, because I think, maybe 10, 15, 20 years from now, that conversation might shift, and it might be Breath of the Wild when we look at where Zelda is or where video games are.
Yeah, it could be Breath of the Wild right now. But it's like, yeah, it's still, I think for so long now, we've had so many Zeldas just trying to recapture what Link to the Past did. Like that was the whole thing. We talked about those gimmicks. It's like, okay, Link to the Past, but here's the new gimmick.
Link to the Past, but with the train. Yeah, exactly. And it was just that over and over.
And it's like, okay, man, they really found the foundational elements of this franchise pretty early on, and it's foundational for a reason. So yeah, I think Link to the Past probably is the right answer.
All right, I'm happy with that. If you're happy with that, if you have a pick you're more confident with, I'm willing to hear it. But that's where I'm at.
I think we talked it out, and I think that's right.
Beautiful. All right, Jeff, we did it. We ran the gauntlet. Here is our official, the definitive tier list for every single Zelda game. I think we got a good spread. I think,
yeah, absolutely.
For the most part, our picks are solid. I mean, obviously, people are going to have their favorites. I think The Legend of Zelda and B might be the spicy one here, but it is what it is, all right? Compared to all the other incredible games that followed it and what that game led to. It's hard. I don't know. It's an important franchise to so many people for so many reasons, and I appreciate you taking the time to go through this gauntlet with me.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. I'm just looking at this list. I'm like, yeah, that looks right. I'm happy with the work we've done here today.
I'm gonna rate our tier list an S.
Absolutely, and then I'll rate that rating of that tier list an S, and so on and so forth into infinity.
Yeah, so let's do a reaction video of us creating this tier list.
You fucking idiots! You guys messed up so bad.
What?
You guys don't know anything. Yeah, let's do it.
Jeff, appreciate you, man. I won't keep you for too much longer, but for the amazing people hanging out, joining us, let everyone know where they can get a hold of you. We talked about it at the start of the show, but you are one of my favorite people to watch and discuss video games, especially on the Nintendo side of things. So appreciate you coming on and doing this with me, man.
Yeah, no problem. You guys can get me over on the Game Mess. Really, just go to the discord.gg/Game Mess, join the forum or the Discord over there, hang out with us. We're always doing stuff over there. I got a couple podcasts, like you mentioned. And then giantbomb.com. We'll be doing Blight Club tomorrow, where we're making Dan play Sonic 06 because it's bad, and I played Bubsy 3D because it's bad. And we've picked what Mike's going to be playing when it's his turn, and boy, is it bad. So it's a secret. He doesn't even know, and we're just going to send it to him. He's going to open it up. It's for the original Xbox, and that's all he knows. So we got a lot of fun stuff going on. But yeah, just go ahead and check those things out. Giantbomb.com and the Game Mess. And thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it, Miles.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, Jeff. And no spoilers, but is it whacked? Is it whacked?
Oh, it's worse than that.
Oh, yes. Looking forward to that.
It's messed up, actually. Before we make him play.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for hanging out. A couple tier throwdowns coming up that I'm working on. Special Nick of Xbox Era wants to rank all the Mario games. So we're trying to find a day and time with his schedule being Australia to do that. I'm also working on a guest for Resident Evil as well. Those are coming up. In the meantime, have an amazing week, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care, everybody.